What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Remote Front Office. Before we get started today, because we weren't initially planning on doing an episode today, I initially was going to do another one Monday, taking a couple of weeks off. But we got a blockbuster trade, so I decided we would go ahead and do it today instead of waiting until Monday. If you guys are new to the channel, though, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. As we start to get closer to the NBA season, guys are starting to report for camp and stuff. We will start to get twice a week. As of right now, it's once a week. So let's go ahead and get into it. So, I know there's a couple of things that have happened since we last discussed anything. Um, Joel Embiid signed his extension. Woj retired from being a how do you say it? News reporter. Derrick Rose retired from basketball. Derrick Rose retiring from basketball has pretty much been my feed for the last couple of days here. But the reason that we are doing this today is for one reason and one reason only. The New York Knicks made a trade. So we saw that they acquired Mikal Bridges earlier this offseason and brought back what we were calling the Villanova Knicks, right? That is no longer the case. They have now traded Julius Randle, Dante DiVincenzo, and the Detroit first that they have for Karl-Anthony Towns. I guess apparently they're also doing kind of a side trade off of this with Charlotte for Daquan Jeffries and draft compensation. I'm assuming just to kind of clear up some cap space, to be honest. Because I have a feeling salaries didn't match is what it was. So in order to make sure that they don't get capped at the first apron, they went ahead and sent a side deal off to Charlotte as a part of this deal so that they're following the proper salary balancing issues. Let's talk about this from the Knicks side first, because I feel like I like their side of this better than I like the T-Wolves side. It makes sense in my mind, right? We got the news the other day that Mitchell Robinson more than likely will not be starting the season due to an injury. So then, therefore, you are essentially having Precious Achiuwa with no backup center, correct? So this way, at least, you have Cat to start the season as your 5. Once Mitchell Robinson's back healthy, ideally, Cat will go back to playing the 4 like he did last year. We've seen proof of this work already in Minnesota. The one thing that I guess I'm still questioning is what does that leave the pecking order as, right? Because you have initially it was Randall was probably the third option, right? In reality, because you have Brunson and then Mikal, and then Randall, Randall and Mikal. I feel like were fairly in the same spot, right? It was pretty much a 2A 2B situation. Now though, I feel like Cat almost has to be the second player because he's a better offensive player in my mind than Julius Randle, obviously, right? But and he's a better spacer, which I do like for this team now a little more. Because the idea of having Mitchell Robinson out there with Julius Randle, if you guys watched a lot of Knicks or even just some of the Knicks last year, right? When Randle was healthy, it felt like the spacing was very congested, right? You had Randle that wasn't really going to be a 3-point threat. It was kind of a mid-range threat. Obviously, Mitchell Robinson's in the dunker spot. You're just not giving a lot of room for really much of anything, right? Brunson's kind of working in congestion. So is OG Anunoby, those sort of things. But the one thing I will say, Cat's probably a worse defender. Cat is healthier, which is good. And Cat, I feel like, is a little easier to transition from power forward to center and kind of flop him back and forth based off Mitchell Robinson's availability, I guess I should say. I feel like Randall as a center is just not quite there. The one thing that does concern me come playoff time, though, is you're asking Cat again to avoid the stupid fouls, which he has a pretty lengthy history of just not doing. So that's the part on the Knicks side that I don't really understand. I understand that Randall probably had to go, right? Just in reality, You need somebody that's a little more switchable. You need somebody that's a little bit less usage, a little less hot and cold, and a little less needing the ball in order to get their shot, right? You want somebody that's more of a catch and shoot guy. Which Randall, it was kind of more of get the ball, get into his bag in the mid range. And if he was really feeling it, it was like a backwards, like post work and all that sort of stuff. But I feel like if anything, you go for a guy that's more able to play as like a third guy, right? Because this pretty obviously puts Cat as your second player offensively. But I would have gone for more of like a switchable wing, right? I feel like OG Anunoby's fairly good at being able to cover bigs, and McHale can cover guards, so maybe one more wing, and then you'd be able to switch like 2 through 4, right? I also don't like giving up Dante DiVincenzo in this deal. Dante DiVincenzo was really good last year, and also just kind of for the quote-unquote vibes of the group, with him being so close to those guys, I feel like that kind of wasn't great. I see everybody kind of overworked about the first round pick. So if you guys don't know, the Pistons pick is basically second rounders in like 5 years. Is more or less what it is, right? It's lottery protected this year, and then I think it was to like top 12, top 10, and then once it hits that and it still doesn't convey in 3 years, it becomes 2 seconds. So it's not really a first; it's a really fake first. Which for Minnesota to get only that for Cat is kind of weird. I feel like Cat might have had a little more value, but then again, it's the contract more than likely $50 million. It's not easy to put together. Now though, for the Timberwolves side of this, right? I don't understand it if I'm Minnesota. I understand Cat was probably the one that had to go. It made the most sense, right? After the playoff push of just the bad fouls, the back and forth, like I understand that part of it, right? That made sense in my mind. What didn't make sense though was what you got for him, right? You got Julius Randle, who could become a free agent. Dante DiVincenzo's on a good deal, and you got a fake first. This makes your spacing even worse now, because Randle is a worse offensive player than Cat, who's already next to Gobert, who's not a spacer. Unless you expect Anthony Edwards to become a much better shooter off the dribble, it doesn't make any sense, right? You are essentially turning what was already a slightly crowded court for Anthony Edwards, who is a slash first guy, just because Jalen McDaniels is inconsistent, and then Mike Conley for stretches. Cat was at least a fairly consistent spacer most of the time, and then you had Gobert that was the dunker spot, right? You now have basically what New York had last year, where you have an inside center and you have Julius Randle, who's not a great spacer. Julius Randle's also coming off of an injury, and I don't necessarily, again, know the details of what the trade that I would have done if people had known Cat was on the market. But I don't feel like this is the move you do, right? You are trying to be a win now team. I feel like this is kind of a sidestep. I do like Dante DiVincenzo for this group though, because on days that like Mike Conley can't close, you then have and Dante DiVincenzo, who are fairly close in height, good defenders. Dante's a good court spacer. That part made sense. The Julius Randle part is where I kind of question just the general thought process, right? Because Gobert's coming up on an expiring, Randall's coming up on an expiring, Mike Conley's getting older. Like I feel like you're shifting your window a little too far out for what this team is right now. You want to take advantage of the Gobert in his quote unquote prime right now. Cat, I feel like we fairly knew what Cat's ceiling was, but I feel like for Minnesota, this trade didn't make sense to me, right? I understood it for New York. It allows you to have a guy who's fairly healthy, that can play your center when Mitchell Robinson misses his 15 games here, 15 games there. And then when Mitchell Robinson's back, he can slide over to power forward like he did last year. So that's really all I've got on it right now. As we start to see actual games and stuff, then I'll have a little bit more feel for kind of how this is going to work, the lineups. Cat playing for Thibodeau is kind of hilarious to me. We'll see how that goes. Just with the 3 questionable fouls he gets a game, I can't imagine Tom Thibodeau is going to be ecstatic about that. But we'll see, right? He coached him in Minnesota. We'll see maybe if Tibbs kind of speaks Cat's language, and we'll see how it goes. But yeah, that's the episode for today. I appreciate you guys coming through, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.